you had to move your engine. So big respect for that. So this picture here illustrates an engine in Phillipsburg, New Jersey, which we had heard about several years before and had not got out to sea until very recently. This is a picture that I did at the beginning of the project of the engine, at least the steam end of it. The word underneath, resurgam, translates to I shall rise again. This all started basically, my friend and I got interested in these gigantic engines through sort of an interesting series of events. Normally the interest in steam engines with young people starts with locomotives. It did for us, similarly. That changed for me personally when I paid a visit to the Chestnut Hill Waterworks. I was 14. I saw 3 of these engines, beautiful, identical sisters, very short of running condition. And then in 2006, this happened to them. And in my opinion, that is one of the greatest travesties of our time. They broke up just about everything. There are only 3 survivors left in the neighboring building. This is one of them. And I was briefly involved with the museum there, and in that time I went up, down, sideways on these engines. And having worked with Corliss engines before of various types at the New England Wireless and Steam Museum, I developed a proposal to get at least one running, which they were absolutely not interested in. So after trying to sort of make that happen for a while, I sort of lost interest. But I said to myself, during that time, looking over these incredible machines, you know, when you go into a building and something is towering 4 stories over you and it's the size of a small office block and it's an engine, it really profoundly affects you. So I decided at some point I'd like to get one of these going. And my friend here has a fairly similar story.
I was similar as a very young child, first drawn to trains, but I grew up in upstate New York. My family grew up in Pennsylvania, and that's where the remainder of the family left. So fairly frequently we'd go down to visit them, driving the 3 hours, and always towards the end of the trip there was a little jewel that caught my eye and had me trying to climb out the windows of the car. And that was off in the distance the former blast furnaces of Bethlehem Steel. And as a child I grew with an absolute obsession to try and learn everything I could about these things. So mysterious, amazing mechanical monsters. And of course, I had a very interesting steam account. That's me when I was probably almost 8 years old, running the first toy steam engine I ever got. Coincidentally, I even had a Newcomen Beam engine on the slide. How nice did that go? So, it was very difficult for me growing up in an area that didn't have a lot of steam engines. Unlike Alex, there was no New England Wireless and Steam near where I was that I knew of at the time. There wasn't any operating locomotives. So I started teaching myself how to create accurate digital models of them to try and fill the void. But in doing so, I accidentally taught myself how the real machines actually work. And study the blueprints, study the design, study the real pictures, and slowly but surely build up accurate depictions of what was going on the outside and the inside. That's some of the work I've done. And then, in a quick little example of how amazing it is to make good connections, I finally got a chance in about 2013 to go visit the old steel mill on a photography trip. And of course I was initially just, oh my god, the steel mill, I'm finally getting inside to see what's going on in there. It was a very important trip. Of course I met Mike Pierce there, which would come important later. But a nice little added bonus to this photography trip was that you get to go see this old building over in Phillipsburg that happens to have a really big steam engine. Oh, that sounds nice, I'll go with that as well. These photos were taken in 2013. I had no idea at the time that I was looking at an engine that my friend Alex and I would later be restoring here. And of course, I saw it first like this, and we since strove to make everything work. So, the Phillipsburg engine and Wilbur following it are a little bit different as a case than the prior 2 engines. Both of those engines are horizontal cross compounds. They had to be picked up and moved from where they were sitting. They're also comparatively not that large. Our engine, in this case, is exactly where it was installed in 1913. It has not been able to be moved. It could not be moved due to its scale. It is also at this point the largest operating stationary steam engine in North America, the only operating plane with triple expansion Corliss outside of Europe, and it was the first of all the waterworks engines here to be operating in preservation exactly when they were built in the Wayne Station. And here's a little example of what it looked like when we first found it and what it was like when we dumped it. So the restoration began due to a couple of very fortuitous little events. Knowing my parents as long as I did, and also meeting Alex, I put all three of us in communication. And very fortunately, Mike knew that the former caretaker of this engine was very much wanting to bring in some new fresh blood to help him out and see it run. And it just so happened to be us. So we started this in about, what was it, 2016, 2017?
Yes, mid-2017.
Mid-2017, we actually started restoration. Both of these photos were taken on the very first day of the restoration. And we instantly began the work.
We had some challenges. There are many surviving engines in the country, not many, but in the double digits. This one was by far in the worst condition of all the survivors, except for perhaps a very broken example of Fall River. Specifically, the working parts of the valve gear had almost all been broken or snapped in half because a previous restoration attempt had involved forcing the engine over against seized valve gear, which basically broke all of the valve gear. These pieces are quite large and quite difficult to make, so our task was we have to make duplicate pieces.
So what you can see here is Alex using a roofing torch to heat up one of the broken components in the hope that we can actually get it off of its spindle. That's the steam arm of one of the intermediate pressure admission valves. This is a close-up of the heat. You can see there
the arm's broken off.
Of course, the work was continuing. We took the opportunity to drill and tap a small hole in the backs of the valve chest so that we could directly pour penetrating oil into the valves. Of course, after being seized for so many years, we needed to do that. It's also an important little moment to mention this. The last time this engine had run was actually not all that long ago. It was 1987. This was much in the same case as Snow. This was an engine that had to be run annually to prove to an insurance company that it could still be considered a reliable backup. Now, it had last gone out of service for regular service and been officially replaced in 1978. So the time that the engine Kyle spoke about at Old Threshers was being moved and being erected in a museum, this engine was still in active service and had not yet been relieved at all. And of course, one of our first decisions, we found a lovely sign in the building that simply said "Think" on it. We decided it has a rightful home on top of the engine.
The IBM motto.
Very good one. So to help continue giving you an idea of the condition of this engine,
This is what we were up against.
these were once upon a time studs and nuts that were holding one of the flanges onto the condenser down at the very bottom of the engine. The engine floor scale is approximately 6 stories tall, 5 of which are below the level of the ground. This section of the engine is in the bottom of a pit that floods regularly, so there's quite a lot of water damage down there. Although it's fresh water, so it's not all that bad. This is another image of one of the 2 broken steam arms. This probably was low pressure.
Low pressure bottom.
Low pressure bottom. You can see we'd applied penetrating oil to it, we'd been heating it up, and we're slowly working on getting it off. That was the first and one of the most important tasks, and at first what we understood to pretty much be the end of the broken parts. And that's another image of the one broken steam arm. Sadly, there was more broken components than we realized. After the engine had gone out of service, they very simply closed the doors on the station and walked away. It had been abandoned for several years. During this time, the wooden roof had begun to disintegrate, letting water in. Eventually, when the roof was replaced by the county as they took ownership of the building, they simply pushed the old roof into the building to get rid of it. So water and debris have been covering the engine for years. And we now have a fear of the word dashpots. The dashpots, of course, for those of you who are familiar with the cordless valve gear, are very critical to attaining the quick closing action that makes it so effective. These are photos of some of ours.
These being inverted bucket-shaped, they collected rainwater. The building not being heated made that water turn to ice in wintertime, which split the bottom and top halves of these apart, which you can see in the left side of that photograph, just the ends hacked off. It also did something else. Cast iron doesn't bend easily, it usually breaks, but in this case, the ice expanded the piston diameter and seized it so hard in the dashpot bore, it took 50,000 pounds of hydraulic force just to get them out. This is what caused the engine to get broken when it was attempted to be rotated in the first place. These would not move, so the first thing that moved was the pieces breaking instead.
The rest of the engine was actually in quite good condition, despite looking like an absolute wreck. You could still turn the engine over relatively easily once you disconnected the valve gear. The pistons were free, the crankshaft was free, none of the bearings had any damage to it whatsoever. So underneath all the grime was really quite a solid engine. And it didn't hurt at all that in the building, and had been kept safe for many years, were the original blueprints all in their canvas, found in a nice canvas book.
That's about 6 feet wide.
It is. We took the opportunity to have them professionally digitally scanned, and I can show you now. This is just a photograph of the overall general view of the engine on the blueprint. This is the proper scan of it, so you can start to get a sense of how this engine goes together. And all of this has been properly documented and cataloged, so we now have every blueprint for the engine saved. And the original blueprints themselves are being kept very safe in a wonderful steel box.
Thank you to, I think, I pronounce it, Nicholas Zimbuski,
Yes.
for professionally digitizing these. These are super high resolution files, and if you blew it up all the way, it probably covered the entire wall.
And you wouldn't notice any gradient. So this is also, just added this view in, this is a view of the valve here. Although, interestingly, it's flipped. If you actually look at the real engine, the valve gear is the mirror of this. So this is a view again of the top of the dash pots. We've been attempting to pressurize them with hydraulic oil to get them to move. You can see some of that oil there.
That didn't work.
That method didn't work. Some of them did come fairly easily with some application from a jack and a long rod to push them up. These were high pressure dash pots. They were the smallest and in the best condition. So we were able to get them out relatively easily. The intermediate pressure and low pressure proved to be in far, far worse condition.
I decided to begin cleaning out our 4 original boilers. We have 4 immense horizontal return tube types made by DM Dillon. These were put away very, very well and stored properly, but this horrible thing happened when they knocked the chimney down. The debris from the chimney came tumbling down through the breaching and landed in the smoke boxes and went into the boilers themselves through the open mud hole doors. So I had quite a cleaning job with that because I don't want sulfurous things inside that boiler because any sort of moisture combines with that, and a perfectly good boiler will get rotted out from the inside. Oh yes. The crane is there, but when we took over the project it was stuck. I like heights, no one else does, so I climbed up on top of that crane, which is an 8-story drop from the trolley to the floor. And my friend here, who I trust with my life, wheeled me across on that trolley all the way across to get to the carrier bearings on the far side, and after that we had a working crane.
If it were not for that crane, we very simply would not have been able to restore the engine. We were able to use it to manually rotate the engine to get all the pieces to come back together once they were being reassembled. We had to use it to lift up components that were too heavy to lift on our own to free up the valve gear. If it were not for this crane, this restoration very simply would not have been able to happen.
That is a 10-ton crane built by the Whiting Company, and it is entirely hand-operated.
You'll notice on the in the bottom of the photo all those chains dropping down. Only 2 of those actually go to the hook. The rest of those are manual travel for moving the entire bridge, moving the trolley, 2 different speed of hoists, a brake cable, very complicated arrangement, and you get one workout lifting anything with that. We also had basically this entire building, despite being quite dirty and having been used as a storage building for many years, underneath all of that was a complete waterworks, and this even comes down to the secondaries. The boilers were there, the engine was there. There was supposed to be a twin engine installed. They never got around to it because someone forgot that you need to put up the engine before you do the building. So they installed a Terry turbine in 1914, which has a very bizarre and complicated series of pumps and dynamos and generators and motors, which no one understands and no one likes running anyways. But one of the things that came out of it was you have a very lovely 1914 GE direct current motor that is installed in the building. And we decided, well, This engine is so beat up. This whole facility is so beat up. Anyone we've told we're serious about restoring it sort of goes, yeah, right, no one's going to get that. We're going to prove to you we're serious. We ran wire, at least temporarily at the time, from the breaker box to the original DC panel, built a rectifier, and started making all the repairs necessary to get the panel lit up and the motor spinning. You can see on the left the panel is live, all the equipment is working, and on the right you can see the motor spinning up for the first time. A little bit of sparking you see there on the commutator, that's normal for a motor that hasn't run in a while. It's just blowing basically spiders out of it.
That motor is from 1914, so it's only 1 year younger than the steam engine, which makes it, I think, 105 years old.
I wasn't particularly good at
We ran tests with it to see that it wouldn't have any serious problems before we fired it up. The tests came back very decent, meager testing and other things. We got that motor spinning just about 3 months into the project, and a lot of people enjoyed that.
We left it running at one point for 5 hours straight, just to say, if it's going to throw any problems at us, it's going to throw them at us now. Perform flawlessly. The bearings don't even get. And of course, there was more we were working on. We can't put DC on the original lighting panel quite yet, but we got at least the lamps working and then slowly but surely cleaning up the whole facility. Now, also, budget was a bit of an issue. We did not have a lot of money to make this happen. And we weren't able to restore the original boilers, not quite yet. It's a long-term goal. We still want to get the engine running first. And so we need an outside connection to go to a portable boiler. We need new piping. New piping is expensive. Luckily for us, there was a lot of older redundant system in the building that had either been removed or was no longer operational, or I guess pipe that was sitting around from the waterworks days that we could grab and put back into service again. And that's what we were doing here. We're heating up the flange on this section of, I believe, those 3-inch pipe, so that we could assemble what my colleague here is leaning on, which is a new steam connection that we could run a hose to out the door to a portable boiler and get the engine running. That is exactly what we later do. This is a custom-made adapter flange made by a local man named Steve Leatherman. He's a fantastic engineer and machinist, and fantastically and wondrously donated his time and materials to make this part happen, as well as many others. He was instrumental.
He made that happen on his company time, which was
He did.
very, very nice of him.
So this is a photo of me, oddly enough, putting the flange on and getting it secured.
We decided to optimize our time when we ran out of tasks to do in the engine house. Sometimes we would be cutting gaskets for different tasks in the motel room itself on the table to maximize our time there.
Yeah. We have free time not doing anything, might as well get to work on the engine. Also, there's not many good tables in the engine house, so we do what we can. Once we'd gotten those dash pots out, they continued to sort of be the bane of our existence until the engine ran. You can see here in the photo on the left, we are taking out the bottom of one of those dash pots because they split in half lengthwise.
The bottom halves had to be pulled out, the top halves had to be pushed out,
They had to come out separately.
and they would not move easily.
Now, on the right, you can see me there with a hone. We had to hone the cylinders as they were quite gnarly after years of water sitting in them and developing surface scale. Now, on the left, you can see what ultimately became our salvation. That is a pusher rig designed by Scott Carlisle. It bolts into the bottom of the flange. You put a hydraulic cap in the middle of it, and you just pump and pump and pump until something moves. It was a bit nerve-wracking to just stress it, put all that force on it, feel it loading, and then the whole pot would jump up. It would move a corner of an inch. All right, do it again. You just kept slowly working it up, but we got them all out. No incidents came time. And that jack required, to get one dash pot out, I think the highest we attained was 50,000 pounds of force to move one of these dash pots. Normally you should be able to slide them up and down by hand, so that should give you an indication of exactly how locked in they were.
And you can also see in this picture, when you're standing on the deck below, they're several feet above your head. There is no deck above them because for some reason they decided to put these dash pot pistons about 3 inches underneath the floor deck of the next floor. This is not at all usual. Usually on a waterworks engine, they're mounted at breast level off the next deck where you can get at them very easily. And these pistons, once we had dislodged them, weighed about 90 to 110 pounds. So we had to do some interesting gymnastics to get in there because, of course, the crane can't go sideways. And that whole task was just very, very troublesome and annoying and unpleasant.
It did require some gymnastics and very careful footing to move that in. And here you can see on the left, that's Scott Carlisle, the man who helped us out with that wig oh so much.
And on the right is just a little bit of celebratory pyrotechnics.
The dash spots had proved to be such an issue that when we finally got them out, after jumping up and down, yelling and screaming and hollering for about 20 minutes, we decided to let off some fireworks.
It was the ultimate triumph.
It was well deserved.
So now we had to start making the new pieces. Now that all the old broken ones were out of the thing, we had to begin constructing new ones. And of course you cannot go to the local hardware store to pick up pieces of a 1914 Alice Chalmers Waterworks engine. This is a drawing that I constructed in the middle. On the left is an example of one of many broken pieces, and on the right is an example of that piece new. Again, done by Bill Hazard, masterful man in just about every aspect.
You heard Bill Hazard mentioned in Mike's presentation. He again came into the fold to help us here. He was able to take our drawings, 3D print patterns, then was able to get them cast, and then machined them himself.
On machines older than the engine.
Using flat belt driven line shaft and machines from the 1890s run off of a hit and miss engine to make those parts for our steam engine. And it was quite fitting.
These are the new pieces going on.
Replacing one of the